It's Harmony here. Welcome back to the Thrive podcast. So happy to say that we launched the pilot episode of this podcast 2 weeks ago, and the response was really great. I think a lot of people are excited about the discussions that we're going to have on the show, and we are on episode 1 today. And as I explained to you before, we are basically going to be unpacking how do we thrive as people? What is included on this journey to thriving, right? What are the tools that we need to be able to actually become who we were created to be, to access the tools that we need to thrive? And today we're going to be talking about what I think is actually the first step to thriving, right? We're going to be talking about what I call walking through the door, which is the first step towards changing your life, or rather moving from what was to what is. It's that crossroad moment that we often so find ourselves in. That is the place really where we make the choice, whether or not we're staying in what is comfortable and safe or moving forward to what is calling to us. You know, I spoke about thriving for me on a personal note, in the sense that I knew I was not thriving because of how I felt about my life, the discontentment, the dissatisfaction, the unhappiness. And at that point, I actually felt like I was stepping into a new space that required that I respond differently. It required that I make different choices. And that is what we're talking about, that moment that we all get to, when we feel that there is a push or a challenge even for us to do things differently because what we've been doing is not working. And we understand that the state that we've been in is not effective. The state that we've been in, or the way that we've been functioning, does not help us, is not producing the results that we want to see. And we are looking forward to something new. We're looking forward to the more, right? To something better. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode. We have a special guest on today's episode. My friend Nomvula is here to talk to us about her experience with thriving, what it's meant for her over the past couple of years, and where she finds herself today. But before we talk to Nomvula, I just wanted to talk about what I consider this part of the thriving journey to be about. You know, the decision that we have to make between what I've coined counter thrive mode, which is the opposite of thriving. So when we get to that point where we realize that, you know what, I'm not actually functioning as effectively as I'd like to. I'm not happy with what is happening around me. I'm not happy with who I am. And there's a desire, a calling inside of me to be more, to achieve more, or to even just utilize the talents and the skills and the abilities that I have for more than just what I've been doing. That point is what we're going to be talking about today. What entails that step? What does that step entail, and what are the things that make up that step when we move into thriving? So come on in and let's continue the journey. It's time to thrive. So as I mentioned before, I really believe that when we are at the precipice of a life-altering transformation, we are met with 2 doors, right? At the place at which we make the decision that we need to be different. We need to be doing things differently because we're not satisfied and we're not happy with the results of our lives thus far. We step into a space where our decisions have to be made and a step needs to be taken. And that step is going to alter the course of our life if we know it. So I literally visualize it and I use reference to my own life, right? As standing before 2 doors. And the first door is the door we know. Nah, it's safe, right? We know the outcomes. We can walk through that door and we know exactly what we're going to find because that's the life we've lived. We know what the pros and the cons are because we've come from there. And it's a door that represents our comfort. It's a door that represents our safety, even if it doesn't represent our satisfaction. And I think in a lot of instances, as people, we are constantly toggling between being satisfied, being more, or achieving more, and this level of stepping out of comfort. Because often becoming more requires that we do things differently. And I think this is something that as human beings, we're not comfortable with. We're not creatures of change, right? We're creatures of habit. And so this door, the first door, represents habit. It represents what we've come to understand as normal. It represents safety. And we are standing in front of the door that we know. And next to it is the other door. The other door calls to us because in our state of dissatisfaction and in our state of not being whole, because we feel like something is missing, there's a void. And so we want to step into a transformative state where we can actually achieve the things that we think or we believe that we can. The other door presents that opportunity to us. The other door says, there's more behind me, but you need to make the choice. The other door says, I don't know what to expect behind that door, but I know that it's different. And I have an inkling, a feeling that behind the second door, the void that I've been feeling for so long will be filled, right? I have a sneaky suspicion that behind the second door lies change and excitement and new opportunities and things that I may not particularly be familiar with, but they are good for me. There's that sort of feeling, and we stand in front of these two doors. And I feel as though our journey to transformation or our journey to thriving begins at that point, right? At the point where we are faced with do normal, do the things you've been doing, or step into something new, something that promises more. And that's the analogy of the two doors that we find ourselves standing in front of when we're about to go into our thriving season. And today I want to talk about the three elements that are involved in making the decision to enter which door, right? The choice to choose, or rather the choice we make between the two doors hinges primarily on three things. And we're going to talk about those three things today. And the first of those things is what I call believing, right? Or faith, as we've come to know it. The second thing is moving or taking action. And finally, freedom, living, right? And I certainly believe that those three elements are crucial to making the decision of which door to step in when we are at that crossroads. So before we step into these three elements, I want to read you a verse from the book of John, chapter 10, verse 9, one of my favorite verses. And it speaks about doors, right? And Jesus says in this verse, I am the door, right? If anyone believes in me, they will go in and out and find pasture, right? They will find ample grazing land. And he's speaking specifically in this verse because the verse preceding this one, he was using the analogy of shepherds and sheep, right? So him being a shepherd, or him being the gatekeeper of the shepherds, and us being, or the gatekeeper of the sheep, rather. Scrap that, right? So him being the gatekeeper of the sheep and us being the sheep, right? So in this verse particularly, he moves on to say, I am the door. I am the door, right? I am the door. And whoever believes in me will go in and out and will find pasture. What is the correlation to this verse and our decision to step into thriving mode, right? What is the link between what God says here and the choice that we have to make between the two doors? And if we start with the first point, or the first element of this journey, or this part of the journey that we are on, and we talk about believing, faith. Deciding which door to actually step into hinges heavily on what you believe. And any decision that you make hinges on what you believe. Our faith is one of the most important factors that we decide anything. We move, we act, we do things, we're motivated to do things on the basis of what we believe. So when we're standing in front of these two doors and we have to decide which of the two to go into, our ability or our journey to thrive starts with an assessment of what we believe. John 10 verse 9 says, I am the door. And that basically tells us that Christ is saying that the door is me and I am the door. And if we equate what the door represents, and I've already told you that the first door is what we know. That's how we've done things our whole life. It's how we've carried on doing things in our strength with our wisdom. That's door number one. Door number two is something very different because we don't know what's happening there. But we do know that whatever is going on behind that door is what our soul is yearning for, because we're not satisfied with what's been going on in door number one. Now, Christ says in the scripture that he is the door. And if we equate the characteristics of the second door that we're talking about, the characteristics of, possibilities, opportunities, yes, there's a lot that we don't know about it because we haven't exactly lived through it, but we are certain that it's different to what we've known. And at this point, we are yearning for different. So surely that this door should be the door that we take. Making that decision hinges on what you believe. Our pastor from church likes to make the example of faith representing a confidence in something we haven't seen yet, a belief in something happening that doesn't or has not necessarily happened yet. And he likes to use the analogy of a chair. If you take a chair, like the one I'm sitting in now, this chair, I'm sitting in it, or I believe that this chair can carry me because I believe, I have faith in the chair's ability to do what the chair is designed to do. If I walk into a room and I see a chair in the corner of the room, my knowledge of that chair's design, my faith in that chair's ability to do what the chair is designed to do is what's going to drive me to sit in the chair. And that's what faith is. If we believe that Christ is the door, we will believe that the door is good. Or what we believe of Christ will determine how we see him as a door. And I think at that crossroads that we find ourselves, the first assessment is how or what do we believe? What do we believe, firstly, of what lies behind the second door? What do we believe of what Christ is saying of him being the door? Do we believe or think or feel that God is good? Do we think that he has good in store for us? Do we believe that the good he has in store for us, he will give us? Do we trust him to do that? And answering those questions will necessitate or navigate us in the direction that we want to go in relation to thriving. The problem is, if we don't believe those things, making the decision to step into door number two will be delayed, right? So we will constantly be going back and forth between door number one and door number two because we don't necessarily believe what we know of door number two, which is actually door number one, right? We don't necessarily believe what Christ says about him being the door and the door that offers potential, the door that offers everything that we're yearning to have. If we don't believe that to be true, then we will maintain our presence in door number one, because I can function in door number one without belief because I know what lies behind door number one. I know the life I've lived. It's predictable, right? I know the 9 to 5. I've done it. I can keep doing it. I know the people in my circle behind this door. I can keep hanging around with them. I can keep building those relationships or not because I understand their responses. I've lived there long enough. So door number one is absent of faith at this point because it doesn't require faith anymore. You've been there. You've done the thing. You know how it's going to work, right? Door number two requires faith. It requires us to assess what we believe before stepping into it because we have no idea what's behind there. We have no idea what waits on the other side. All that is working within us is the fact that I'm not happy in door number one anymore. I'm not satisfied. And something behind door number two is calling to me, right? But you need to make an assessment of what do you believe to be true of door number two. And once you get to that point where you've done that assessment of your belief, of your faith, and what you put it into, making the decision to step into door number two will be a lot more easier because you will be doing it on the basis of what you believe. Just like sitting on a chair or planning a trip. You're not there at the destination that you plan to go to yet. but you believe that getting into your car and driving there will get you there. There's faith, right? We don't grow in environments of predictability and comfort. Growth must be coupled with faith. Growth is coupled with the fact that I'm putting this seed into the ground and I'm going to water it. And I believe that the seed will do what it does when water and soil mix together and photosynthesis happens and the plant grows. But if you say, you know what, I've tried the seed thing before, I've put it in, it didn't work, whatever, I'm not going to do it, I don't believe it will, you won't grow, right? And if door number 1 is still your place of comfort, then stepping into door number 2 is not an eventuality for you because your assessment of belief is flawed. So what do you believe about thriving for yourself? And do you believe that God is the door that He says He is? Do you believe that stepping through that door will lead to a better life? Do you believe that stepping through that door will allow you to have access to this person that you know that you can become? This person that can give more, that can be more than you've been in door number 1. So the first step to the decision of which door to take hinges heavily on what you believe. Thriving cannot happen without faith. It cannot happen without faith. And most importantly, where does your faith lie? That is the big question. And it's a question that we have to ask ourselves continuously, trusting that if He says He is the door and He wants us to believe that He has good in store for us, then comfort pales in comparison to what He has to offer us. Faith and thriving go hand in hand. So I remember for me, the point at which I decided I didn't want to do life the way that I'd been doing it for almost 20 years, was a point that I just felt empty, right? Like I felt as though I'm stuck. I felt as though everything I've been doing is not yielding the results that I wanted to. And I'm desperate to find out what is it that I am here for? What is my purpose? What am I supposed to be giving the world that I haven't been giving, you know? And at that point, the prayer that I made was, Lord, please show me, because I can't do this anymore. So I picture myself standing in front of these 2 doors. And the first door is the life that I've come to know. And of course, the second door is the door, right? The second door is the door, right? So at that point, God challenged me to make a decision based purely on faith. He said, if you want to do things different, you have to do things different. And the first thing that I did was I resigned from a job that I'd been working at for almost 12 years. It was the most scariest thing I ever had to do because, to resign from a job without a backup plan, I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. None. I didn't. And the people around me who asked me, okay, you're resigning, what are you going to do? Do you have a plan? Are you starting a business? The answer was, I don't know. All I knew was the door. God said to me, step in and trust that I have good for you on the other side. And I had to assess my faith. I had to sit and say, do I believe what you are telling me? And believing what you were telling me meant doing something. And that leads me to the second step of the thriving process, or rather the journey to thriving at this stage. And that is moving, right? Moving or taking action. Now, faith without works is dead. So we can believe all we want. If we don't act in our belief, it's as good as nothing. Using the analogy of the chair again, we may believe that the chair is designed to carry our weight. We may believe that the chair is sturdy enough to carry our weight. But it is in the action of sitting in the chair that we actually put the faith we have in the chair into action. And at this point of the journey in thriving, stepping in front of the door and believing what the second door promises is not enough. It's great, It's great that we do believe, and it's great that our faith is hinged on what the second door is promising us, right? But taking action is more important at that stage. Because if you don't act on what you believe, then what you believe has no value. It has no weight. Okay? So, step one is believing, assessing your faith. Where is your faith? What do you place your faith in? And who or what do you believe in? Do you believe that you are capable of becoming more? Do you believe that God is capable of showing you what that more is? Do you trust what He says about your destiny and your life? Do you trust that you have been given gifts and abilities? Do you believe all of that? And once you agreed, or the answer is yes, I believe, the next point is moving. What are you going to do about it? Right? Stepping into the door. We can spend a long time just hovering outside the door that we believe in. You know, just walking, pacing outside this door instead of actually walking into it. That doesn't help us thrive. It's good. It's good to know that the door is good. It's good to believe what God says. But actions speak louder than words, right? Actions are what takes the faith into something tangible. And for us, that means choosing to walk through the door, not just hanging around outside of it. And the important thing about moving is also the fact that nobody can move for you. I think that's a tricky one, right? Often when we're faced with making really difficult decisions, it's always asking for input from the people that we care about. It's always getting direction from those that we want guidance from. And oftentimes we want to make decisions only based on what we get input on. But when we stand in front of these doors, we need to understand that faith alone is not enough. Action must follow it. And it must be action that you take in your own stead. Nobody can act in your behalf, right? Nobody can step through that door on your behalf. God, being as powerful as He is, chose to give us free will. And I think one of the reasons that He chose to do that is because He wants us to benefit from the rewards of the decisions that we make when they're good, right? To see it play out. But He also wants us to learn from the consequences of decisions that are made wrongly. And the reason that movement is so important to our journey to thriving is because whatever lessons that we learn along the way, they have to be lessons that were instigated by us, right? They have to be lessons based on the choices that we made. So when we take our faith, right, what we believe about the second door into consideration, and we act on it, whatever is produced on the other side of that door will either build our character or help us learn a lesson. And that's the beauty of it, of the thriving journey, is that it's a constant journey of learning and discovering more about God and more about you, more about your abilities and more about your passions and more about your capabilities, right? So the thriving journey is one that's involved with a lot of choices, a lot of decision making, and that isn't a doing word, right? Those are active steps. So even if I have the faith in what I can become, I only know what I'm capable of becoming once I actually do the thing, okay? So doing or moving is a very crucial step in the thriving journey. And at this point, standing in front of those doors, once you believe, do something about it, right? Walk through the door and see what lies on the other side. There is no thriving without action. So once we've taken the leap of faith and we have stepped through the door, we get to live, right? And this is the tricky bit, because I think the reason people just stay in faith mode and don't move into action mode is because of the fear that the life that lies behind that door may or may not give me what I wanted to. What if I'm disappointed in the outcomes that lie behind that door? What if the decisions that I've made, were made ill-advised, and whatever's behind that door is not what it's promising to be? There are two factors to consider at this point, right? The door is Christ. And if He says, what I'm promising to give you is good, believing that is the key. Because He is not a man that He should lie, right? And everything that he says he will do, he will do. So your fear should not govern how you move if you are moving based on what you know of Christ. Your fear should not govern the steps that you take if those steps are steps that are led and motivated by him and who he says he is. So the misconception that I think often exists, especially amongst believers and amongst Christians, is that, the misconception that often exists is that once we choose the door, once we choose Christ, a life of freedom isn't as free as it used to be, right? I think we've misrepresented Christ in a lot of different ways, particularly as Christians, in the sense that people have this sense of thinking that a life dedicated to Christ, or a life, living under the precepts of God and the principles and the values that he set for us, is limiting, right? Is not free. It's not a whole life, because it's legalistic, and it's governed by rules and regulations and rituals and practices. And this is the biggest misconception, I feel, that exists in the world in relation to living a Christ-like life. When we step behind that door, he has already promised us life, and life in abundance, by making the choice to step through the door. And an abundant life is a life of freedom, right? It isn't a life in bondage. And bondage represents the dissatisfaction that we experienced while we were living in door number one. That emptiness that we felt, that we were experiencing every day, that led us to the point where we want more and we want to thrive. That's what was in door number one. In door number two, Christ says they will go in and out, right? Meaning there is freedom. There is freedom for them to move, freedom for them to explore who they are, freedom for them to explore the gifts I've given them and utilize them to the best of their abilities, freedom for them to test out the things that I've told them, to see them play out, freedom for them to make mistakes. Yes, freedom for that as well, because Christ understands that we're not walking a perfect journey, and that our journey, even to thriving, will be marred with a lot of different mistakes. But he is not offering us a life bound by fear. He's not offering us a life bound by, this notion of I must walk in perfection on my way to thriving for it to be effective. He is saying, choose this door and you can be free to roam in and out and find pasture or thrive, right? The beauty about taking the door, the second door, is that freedom comes with protection. And the challenge is often there is an expectation that freedom is loose, right? That freedom is without regulations or rules. Freedom is a life that YOLO, right? Do as you do, boo, okay? So freedom in door number two, does not represent those principles. Freedom in door number two represents the principles of be who I created you to be and be so freely. But be that person living under the principles that I have given you, because it is for your own good. It is for your safety. It is for your protection. Not that I may be this, dictatorial God who wants to rob you of true freedom and living your best life. But because I know what is good for you. I have already predetermined it. I know who you are and who you're meant to be. And I know what you need to do and what you shouldn't do to get to that person, right? So the principles and the rules or the laws that I've set into place are laws that are there to protect you. So in door number two, living or being free encompasses freedom in abundance, in the sense that there are no limitations to who God called you to be. And you have access to all of them in door number two. But you also have access to his protection. And his protection is also to protect yourself from you. So he will set things in place that keep you from falling off of the edge, right? He will put rules in place that ensure that you don't go against the destiny that He has prepared for you. That is the freedom that exists behind door number 2. And I think people tend to believe that the rules and the laws that God has put in place to sort of govern the world and govern us are to keep us oppressed, right? Or to keep us limited. It couldn't be further from the truth. Freedom is only free if it's safe, right? It's like being a child. As a parent, you protect your children from themselves, right? You tell them, this is how far you will go, because I know that on the other side, if you go further than that, you will hurt yourself. It's the same with God. And He offers that protection behind door number 2, not to keep us bound, but so that we may enjoy the abundant life that He has for us and enjoy it fully, without fear or reservations, without wondering, what am I going to do now, or what's going to happen if I don't make this thing right, or the mistakes that I make. He wants to protect us from those consequences too. So as we find or assess the faith that we have in Him, and as we take the steps to move into the second door and take the leap of faith and do what we want, what we wouldn't have done under normal circumstances, we are met with the freedom of abundant life that Christ promises. And that freedom is what sets us alight, right? It gives us the freedom to live effectively, which will be the next section that we cover in our Thrive podcast. But without further delay, I'm going to talk to our guest, Nomvula, who's going to share with us her journey, her thriving journey so far. And we're going to talk about these elements that we've discussed today, faith, movement, and living, and what that means for her, and how she's seen the hand of God in her life on her journey to thriving, and how these 3 things come together to really position us and align us to become the best person or the best people God intended us to be. Let's hear from Nomvula. Welcome back to the Thrive podcast. We're so excited today to have our first guest on the show. A friend of mine, I met her quite recently, and I was so excited because how we met was so divine. And I just knew that I had to have her on the show because we share so many similarities in our journey, but also in our belief that as people, we have everything that we need to succeed already. It's just a matter of utilizing those tools to help us thrive. So please help me welcoming Nomvula today as our first guest on the Thrive podcast. Hello, Elsie.
Hi, Sister Harmony. Nice to be here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so happy and thank you for joining us. I think first things first, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm Nomvula M. I'm a mother of 2, a teacher or lecturer by profession. I love nature, I love mountains, snow, greenery, animals, and everything of God's creation, actually. I'm very passionate about empowerment of communities, especially young people. I believe that growing up, we didn't have as much people as like us, and so they were there, but it was hard to identify them because we didn't have the things they have now, which is the rights. So we were to wait to be told before we can do something. So where I come from, yes, I come from a family of two girls. The firstborn. The story is she had the firstborn when she was ready to be a mom, and the story is when she had me, So the story is when I was born, she didn't want to have me, but obviously this is the stories that you get as you hear grown-ups talking. And I was born in the 80s, so and so you hear grown-ups talking, she could have just maybe let this child be raised by the family of the father or whatever the case it is. And so I think then that's when I started to have this thing from inside me. To find a way to survive knowing that truth about me.
Yeah.
That didn't come from her, that didn't come from anyone else within the family, but like them talking.
Yes.
Grandmother and that.
Yeah.
So as I grew, I met people, and I think this is where I started to realize that there is something different about me compared to Banababa, besides what I had grown up saying. And when I was like Koskolong, I was excelling from primary, high school, intermediate, and all that. And people will be saying, "Yeah, this child, your mother must be proud of you," and all that. People thought that, because they didn't know the truth. Because these people, they looked like they are devoted Christians because they pray and all that. But the truth is, Sister Harmony, it was very toxic.
Yeah.
So as a child, I had to learn to survive every single day of the toxicity.
Yeah.
And the toxic I'm referring to is belittling.
Yeah.
And forcing a low self-esteem to a child, a no confidence, a no self-assurance, like everything about you is you're not good enough.
You're not worthy.
Yes. Yeah, you're not worthy. That's the correct way of saying it. I remember, this is what I always tell people, even Koskolong, I used to be on the, not top 10, like the top 3.
Yeah.
Even with that, right?
Yeah.
What I would be told is, umuntu, you're ugly.
Yeah.
And kids like you, Vele, they excel.
Sure.
Ugly ducklings, they excel. Because what is it that you can be good at? Except for you excel in school. And so that's the toxic I'm talking about. And how I learned to survive was every time these things were said, I remember I used to go look at myself in the mirror and I never saw any of the things they were saying. And there was always a voice inside me which was saying to me like, what are they talking about?
Yeah, because you just didn't see.
I didn't see
this ugly person they were referring to.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
And I didn't even see the difference between me and the other kids.
Yeah.
In fact, I always tell my kids and my other friends the story of how even Labody, we used to do this PT pageant thing when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And so I was really not good with that stuff in a sense of like the step I used to go the other way.
The walking and all
Yes,
of
the
that.
walking and all that. And trust me, so the teachers used to not really banchuza in the group. Trust me, the day Banababang are going to perform, I'll come with my dress. Yeah. Because my friends would be there.
Yes.
And my friends would be like, didn't they ask you to bring yours?
Yeah.
I say, no. I said, I'll tell my grandmother to give me.
Yeah.
And I will go.
Dressed up like them as well.
Yes. Yeah. And when they go, they usually be in church or maybe in a school. So they will call out their names. My name won't be there. Yeah. But I'll follow my friends.
You'll still go.
Yes.
Yeah. That's so beautiful.
Yeah. And there was always a voice inside me saying, look, you're not any of these things. Fast forward to, teenage. And that's when you start to see that, everyone is talking about the stuff they do with their moms.
Yeah.
She's there. Like, I mean, it's not like she passed away or anything.
She's still here.
Emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually unavailable. Detached mentally.
Yeah.
And so I started having this thing of trying to be close to her, but she rejected
She was continuously rejecting you. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes, she did. So she had the other child who supposedly she's my sister. But to be honest, with her as well, I just referred to her as the lady who gave birth.
Yeah. Because there's never been that biological connection.
No.
You know.
She was there, like physically. I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But not there.
Yeah.
The things she would say would be, if you dress like that, what do you think people are gonna think of you? What is people at church gonna think? You can't. There's girls your age. They will think that I cannot buy you the things that they have. So to her, it was all about how people
would perceive her.
Yes, her. No, it was never about me. Nothing was about me, honestly. And I think it was when I was about 14. Yeah, when I was in high school, when I started realizing that there must be a way I should pray to not be stuck like that.
Yeah.
But how do I do that?
Yeah. We'll carry on our discussion with Nomvula next episode. Please tune in to the next episode of Thrive for part 2 of this discussion. Catch you next week, guys. Thank you.